Okay, viewers, Deng Autotech here with another good one. Okay, we're going to work on this 2017 Chevy Malibu. Okay, this car belongs to a friend of mine. Okay, and this car is giving him a lot of trouble. Okay, however, he took it to a mechanic shop and he had it there for some days, and nothing good was done on this car. So he decided for me to check out this car. As you can see, we have a lot of leaves. Okay, after it was being parked at the other mechanic shop, and nothing was done on this car apparently. And the information I received from him, it was that he was driving and he's supposed to hit something, or his wife supposed to hit something, and it caused some damages to the bumper. As you can see, these are some holes, all right, where some sensors belongs, and they're missing. Okay, I think these are some sensors that detect like distance, like how far you are from a car, or so, or if there's something in front of you. Okay, so he says that he needs the radiator replaced, he needs the condenser replaced. Okay, and some other work need to be done. However, when we checked the car, he told me that the car doesn't drive too properly. Okay, and then it goes into limp mode. Okay, for like 40 miles per hour, and sometimes he says the engine overheat, and he thinks it was the thermostat, but I don't think it was the thermostat. However, I scanned the car, okay, and I retrieve some codes from the car, and as you can see, I have my scan tool here hooked up. Okay, all right, and these are the codes that I had gotten. All right, I didn't test drive the car because he drove the car over here, and I rode with him for a minute, and yes, I do feel that the engine is not up to standard. Okay, it doesn't drive too good. And after I scanned the car, okay, I noticed there's a lot of codes. Let me try to get it a little bit clearer so you could see. Okay, so we have all these codes, okay, with P0073, P0097, P00F, 4-00, and so on, you could see. Okay, so these DTCs, okay, I think some of them are related, and there's a lot of them. Okay, let me scroll up some more. Okay, you see we have all these DTCs, and on the side here on the scan tool, that's what it tells you more or less what are some of these DTCs represent, and I will go over a few of them. Okay, because I'm gonna fix this car, and I want you to be with me and see how we fix this car so that this car performs up to standard for the customer. Okay, and the first code, P0073, these that where it says DTC history status history, don't really worry much about that. It just says fail current. This tells you when they run the monitors and if it's passed or if it fails and when. So these are not really, it just gives you like a history. Okay, what is important is this part here where it says freeze frame data, but I haven't clicked on it yet because we are going over the codes. I want to explain because there are not much videos on these cars, on these Chevy Malibus out there. Okay, and I think this would be a very important video for my viewers. Okay, so the first one, where it says P0073, and the main important thing, it says ambient air temperature sensor circuit high voltage. Okay, now that has to do with a sensor that is outside the car, like right maybe around the condenser or the radiator around there, and that has to do with the temperature outside. That sensor picks up the temperature outside and it compares it with the temperature inside the engine compartment or the car, something like that, so that the AC can work more, you know, accurately. So that is not much of a concern when it comes to engine performance, but yes, it can have a little effect, you know, but mainly it's for the AC. All right, so and at where you see this little asterisk, like a little snow icon, yes, that tells you too that it mainly has to do with HVAC, right, with the AC. So this sensor, maybe it's just disconnected, maybe a fuse is blown, maybe it just need to be replaced, okay? But that's not much of an issue. All right, then we move on to the next code, okay, which is in this one here, P00970. Again, don't really worry much about the history and so forth. We go here where it says intake air temperature sensor 2 circuit low voltage. Okay, that's the IAT sensor, IAT sensor. Okay, and this one is important because it has to do with the air coming into the engine. Okay, intake air temperature is it measures the temperature of the air coming into the engine so that it can appropriately mix the gas. Okay, it whether if it's the temperature is high or low or whatsoever, okay, it has to do with the engine. So this IAT is important. The intake air temperature sensor is a bit more important because it works with humidity. If the air is much more heavy or much more light, it knows how to trim the gas. It has to do with fuel trim. Okay, and for those who are more mechanically inclined, you will know more or less what I'm talking about. And also, if you're not that mechanically inclined, I guess you understand what I mean by humidity or light air or so forth. Then we move on to the other one. Okay, this one here. All right, let me scroll up a little. Okay, and this one say intake air humidity sensor circuit low voltage. So this one has to do with the same sensor that I had just talked about, the intake air temperature sensor. But again, but if you can see, there's a little ice icon there. All right, so humidity, that this one here, let me retract. This one here has to do with HVAC, okay, AC. All right, because the way the AC work, the sensor measures the ambient temperature outside, and the temperature should measure like almost, oh, I'm sorry, let me go back. Yes, okay, it measures the, like if you hook up your AC, the tool to measure the refrigerant, all right, the temperature on the gauge should measure like the temperature that is actually outside. Like let's say if it's 78 degrees outside, okay, just regular 78 degrees, your gauge should measure 78 degrees when you hook it up on the HVAC. That's what I mean, okay, with this one here. Intake air humidity sensor circuit low. So there's something wrong with the sensor. Maybe either the sensor is not working, maybe the wires is not, is messed up, or maybe a fuse again, because low voltage, or that means like maybe the ground is messed up. Okay, and we move on to the next one. Okay, manifold absolute pressure sensor, which we call it MAP sensor. Okay, the MAP sensor is a little bit different than the intake air temperature sensor and so forth. The manifold absolute pressure sensor has to do with the intake manifold itself. Okay, the pressure when the air comes into the intake manifold, it measures like the pressure, okay, of the air. So that's a little bit different than the intake air temperature and what it measures, like what I say again, the pressure of the air. So the MAP sensor is also, this one MAP sensor is important for engine performance. Okay, so that need to be checked out too. Okay, that also is important. We scroll up now, we go to this one here. Okay, intake air temperature sensor circuit high voltage. I had already explained about the intake air temperature sensor. Okay, but remember, there's one that says low voltage and there's one that says high voltage. All right, normally that has to do with the circuit. Okay, that has to do with the wiring or the sensor not working and so forth. All right, but what I want to explain here, if you can see the MAP sensor, the IAT, some of these issues, they are related. So after we fix one issue, we might end up fixing all, or not all, but several different issues that the car has. Because what is important here now is the wiring diagram. When I go to the wiring diagram might have wires that are connected to different sensors, under the same circuit. The same circuit and if you fixed one, then you fix the others. Okay, so that's what I want to explain here. All right, I don't want to take too much time explaining and not work, but it's good for you to understand, okay, what you're working on and know what you're working on. We move on to the next code. Okay, next code P0121-00. Okay, don't worry again about the history or whatever. It says throttle position sensor performance, TPS performance. Now that has to do with the throttle body. Okay, the throttle position sensor. Maybe the throttle body is dirty and it's not cleaned, so maybe the butterfly, the flap is not closed fully. Okay, the sensor is malfunctioning. Maybe there's something wrong with the wiring or the circuit or so forth, but the car still moves and the car still drives. It just don't drive up to standard. All right, so the throttle position sensor has to do with the butterfly flap, okay, that is inside the throttle body. But this 2017 Chevy Malibu, these cars nowadays, they don't use drive-by cable, right? Which when you press the gas, the cable will open the flap, the butterfly, to the amount of speed, or so that the amount of air goes in to match the speed of the car, so that the gas mixes with the amount of air that you call stoichiometric, right? Like 14.1 to 1 quart. I'll explain it in another video. Okay, so the throttle position sensor, this one is also important, okay, because this has to do with the throttle opening for the intake manifold to get the air into the engine and for the gas to mix, so it matches, so that the vehicle runs to its best performance. Okay, you call it fuel trim. It has to do with the fuel trim. So this one we have to check out very, very keenly. Then we move on to the next code. Okay, next code is a P03250-00 knock sensor. Okay, now the knock sensor is a very, very sensitive part of the car. Okay, it's like a microphone that they have stick on the engine, that it detects noise, it detects knocking in the engine, and knocking could be caused by maybe pistons, you know, and pistons knocking or so forth. It will detect it, but that's not the only thing that it will detect, because to let you think like, oh yes, something seriously is wrong with the car. Okay, the knock sensor can also detect what we call pre-ignition. Okay, pre-ignition is that, like, when the spark plug fires and the explosion occurs inside the cylinder, sometimes it could be more than one explosion. Okay, and if it detects more than one explosion because of maybe excessive gas, all right, it can trigger the knock sensor, because that's an additional explosion. So if you understand what I'm saying, so this knock sensor code we can fix. All we need to do, check the spark plugs, make sure they're clean, make sure when I go to the live data and freeze frame data, okay, it will show me whether the fuel trim, if the cylinders are getting a lot of gas inside, if the injectors are spraying a lot of gas inside the cylinder, you can have pre-ignition. Okay, or sometimes the spark plug fired before the cylinder reached top dead center where it's supposed to reach. Okay, so that one we're going to take care of. And another one, knock sensor circuit low voltage. So again, okay, it might have to do with just maybe one fuse, maybe one relay, or maybe just the wire, something, maybe a wire is severed or something, you know, or something is not connected properly. All right, so we're going to take care of that. All right, let's move to the next one, as we don't want to be spending another time. Okay, P050-00, it says idle speed low. Okay, idle speed low. Again, with this one here, on the car, there is a thing that they call idle air control valve. Okay, and the idle air control valve is a part that whenever the butterfly is fully closed, okay, it's fully closed in the throttle body, there's a little bypass hole that is tiny, a bypass hole, you know, that is small, that air comes in to keep the car idling properly, okay, at a certain speed. And if that is clogged, or is kind of messed up with carbon, okay, the car could idle low. All right, so it not necessarily means that and also the idle air control valve could be stuck. Okay, it could be stuck closed, it could be full of carbon, and it can cause the car to not idle properly. Okay, so that one, yes, that one need to be checked out too, so that the car idle, up to standard we're supposed to idle. Then we move on to the next code. Okay, brake booster pressure sensor performance. This one has to deal with the brake booster. Okay, and with that too, I might need to check for vacuum leak. Okay, vacuum leak. And I think this car has a turbo, a small turbo on it, that has to do with the booster. Okay, so that we'll need to check that out too. All right, move on to the next code. Okay, engine oil pressure control solenoid valve stuck on. This one here is a P06DE-00. Okay, that's on this scan tool, the Artel Maxicom MK808. Okay, other scan tool will still pick up the code, but they might give you in a different reading. All right, now this one here is very important, because this has to do with the engine oil pressure. Okay, and the oil both lubricates and cool the engine. So if there are certain areas where oil is not reaching, all right, you will have that certain part overheating, because it's metal rubbing with metal that causes friction, and it can overheat. Okay, and that's the owner did complain about the engine overheating. Okay, and he thinks it's it's a thermostat. But if it was a thermostat, then we would have gotten a thermostat code like a P0128 or something like that. Okay, but we don't have that code, so I don't need to worry about thermostat. But the oil might not be reaching in through certain galleries, through certain small tiny holes that is supposed to go to cool this engine and to lubricate some of the moving parts, in order for the engine not to overheat and the engine to work properly. So this engine oil pressure control solenoid valve stuck on is very, very, very important to the engine performance. Okay, and if that is not fixed, it can cause damages, it can cause blown head gasket, it can cause a whole lot of things. So this one here we'll check, and I think this valve is inside the oil pan, so I'll have to drop the oil pan and do some voltage drop testing to see if there is current, if there is if the wires are working properly, and then if it's the valve, and if it's the valve, then we got to change the valve, and again, maybe it might just be one fuse that is blown and the circuit is not working properly, and it can cause the valve again also to malfunction. Another thing that can cause this valve to malfunction is oil change. If you don't change your oil on time, okay, the oil starts to get built up with tiny particles and metal materials shavings that become built up, and there are some small little holes, some small little galleries that the oil need to go through, and if you have build up, it might not go through properly. Okay, so that also is important, and I hardly see any videos on YouTube about this. So after this, we're going to work on this, and I'm going to show the video so that you guys can see how we fix this problem. All right, the other one is this one here. Okay, it's P1101-00 again. Okay, intake airflow system performance. All right, intake airflow system performance means the air that goes into the intake manifold. Okay, the intake manifold, the amount of air goes in there. That's let the computer knows how much gas to tell the injector to send into the intake, into the so that into the intake, so that not the intake, into the cylinders, so that it mix properly. Okay, and this is what would let the car run either rich, right? That's or lean, either rich or lean. Okay, because of the amount of air. The computer looks at the air and it trims the gas. It tells the injector, okay, to let out certain amount of gas based on the air. So the intake airflow system performance that need to be checked. And maybe with this one here, we might just need to clean the throttle body, clean around the butterfly. Maybe it's not opening properly or something, you know. So that one again is very very important. Okay. And this last but not least, okay, P22290, okay, barometric pressure sensor circuit high voltage. Again, it might just be a wire that is messed up. It might just be a fuse that is blown. And also again, the barometric pressure sensor circuit might link to intake air temperature circuit, the mass airflow or the map sensor circuit, and so forth. And through a wiring diagram, I will see if they're related, and maybe it might be one fix, and then that could also be fixed. And also it could be the sensor that is gone bad. But randomly, all these sensors will go bad at the same time. Usually 1 and 2 sensors might go bad, or one sensor go bad, but all at the same time normally will give you a point to something that might have to do with a circuit or so forth, that have all these sensors and all these codes popping up. Now, the barometric pressure sensor, okay, is a sensor that measures, okay, the pressure because of sea level. All right, it has to do with, like, let's say here in California, all right, we might be below sea level, so the barometric pressure sensor will measure different than when you're in, like, maybe in New York or Colorado or somewhere else. Okay, that's just a quick explanation. The barometric pressure sensor is on the engine, okay, and it measures the pressure inside the engine and compares it to the sea level outside. Okay, so that's it for right now, and I'll go to the freeze frame data and do some more research, and then I'll get back to you when we start the repairs.